they actually took me. I was pretty unwell when they got there, and they helicoptered me to the Alfred, the big hospital in Melbourne. And I woke up in intensive care, not knowing what had happened. And it was, that was sort of kind of this surreal experience. But I had the most incredible care, and ended up between the intensive care and the trauma unit because I had so many broken ribs and my sternum. I was on a lot of painkillers, and I was on a lot of wonderful, wonderful things that made me feel completely fine.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. And people complain about one broken rib, and I said, well, when you've got as many as I had broken, you don't feel a thing.
Carolyn, welcome to Fascinated.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jacqui. Very excited to be here.
I love your story. And I don't even know where to begin with your life. But I think as a lesson to all of us when we start out young and we're doing a job, maybe it's our first job, I guess it's to dream big, isn't it?
100%. And I think that's the biggest regret that anyone can have, is not dreaming big enough, and also not, when an opportunity's come their way, not saying I'll give it a go, because that's what you look back on. You think, oh, what if I had have tried that out? Well, that's my perspective.
Because I was reading an article about you in the Fin Review, and they described you as the checkout chick who created a $170 million empire. So how does that label sit with you?
Well, do you know what? I think I like people knowing that I was on the checkout. And what you learn if you've ever been a checkout chick, or I don't know what the politically correct term these days, but that's what we used to call ourselves, is that people will treat you really badly. It was like you were invisible. They'd go through it. It was like you weren't even a human. And all the little part-time jobs that I did when I was 16 and 17, I think have set me up now running Carman's, which I never anticipated it would ever be this big. But I still treat people with an enormous amount of humanity because I know what that felt like. And I think that's what we all want to be seen. We all want to be appreciated. Whether you're collecting trolleys in a supermarket, you're on a checkout, or you're, a CEO who's given someone, organised a great Christmas party, there's nothing I like more than a little email on a Monday saying, oh my God, I had the best time on Saturday night. Thank you so much. So, that's what I think we all love, being appreciated.
Oh, politeness too, isn't it lovely? Now tell me about the supermarket that you started in, and how
Yeah,
long were you there before you went, hang on, I can see a gap in the market here?
yeah. So I started the very day that I could sit the exam, which was 15 and 9 months. So I started working at Coles. And it wasn't so much that I saw a gap. I just did lots of part-time jobs. I was just a hard worker. And I, worked there. I worked Blockbuster on Saturday nights in the days when we used to go and actually rent. Remember the days when
A
you
lovely
used to go?
time,
Yeah,
a
you used to
calmer,
go
a
and
calm
walk
time.
down, and you chose the movie you're going to watch as a
Mm,
family, and you'd hope that it was in
yes.
stock. And one of my part-time jobs was babysitting. And I finished school and I started at uni. And the people I babysat for said, would I like to come and make muesli? And so that's what I did every Tuesday. And after, I was only 18, but after 6 months, they said they were going to sell this tiny business. And I thought, well, why couldn't I be the one to buy it? And I'd saved up, I think I had like $2,200 in my bank account, which was quite a bit, but I'd always saved from all my part-time jobs. And so I ended up putting an offer of $1,000, and they laughed at me, and then they couldn't find anyone else to buy it. And so 3 months later, I was able to buy into it for $1,000.
It's the best story. It's just remarkable, isn't it? So with the muesli, what was it that you were doing? Were you making it on the kitchen table, and did you have this light bulb moment where you thought, hey, this muesli is a bit different? Or what did you think about it what did you think that made you want to buy it?
So it was really buying my job, not necessarily the product. So I bought this, I'm 52 now, so I bought the business when I was 18. And all those years ago, muesli was very uncool. Like there was nothing.
Mm.
and and then people started getting much more into what they ate. I remember going to parties and people would just like laugh in my face, like, what, you own a business that makes muesli? But I just
Yeah.
always hustled, and my big break was trying to get into butchers, because people who go to butchers are going to spend more money on food. So that
Oh,
often they're standing there waiting while they're packing up their meat. So they'd buy heaps of other things, including muesli. And so it's just been this very slow evolution. So for anyone that looks at Carmen's today and thinks it was just born like this, I can tell you, it literally was me driving around, banging on doors, trying to get people to stock it. And then it's just been a slow evolution.
Is it correct to say that you had a small Daewoo hatchback that you would sometimes park alongside the semi-trailers with your muesli in the
Yes.
boot?
And my secret weapon was that I'd been on the checkouts for so long. So I knew the back of a supermarket inside out, back to front. So I would do the delivery and then I would go back in and I'd sign the guest book, I'd run down, I'd get my delivery, I'd come up and I can say it now and I'll probably get in trouble, but I'd put Uncle Toby's on the bottom shelf when no one was watching, and because I could flick tickets, right? So I'd flick the tickets and put them. I had a really crappy position on the bottom shelf, and they had this lovely eye level position, so I'd put myself all at eye level and make it look great. And then I only had 20 stores, so I used all my money to buy the product back before I left the store. So whatever I could afford to get the rate of sales up. I just kept buying my own product,
This is the
then I'd
best.
sell it
So
to the
you'd
next store.
buy it and then resell it at the next supermarket, or
Yeah, so then I
yeah.
just resell it. I just kept the cycle going. And so
It's
I
a
did
secret to success.
yeah, however, not a really good long-term business strategy, but I did whatever I could to hustle at the time to get the business to look good in the eyes of the supermarket buyers.
How did you even get the supermarket deal in itself? I imagine back in those days that would have been quite a significant moment anyway, because you hear about a lot of brown founders who were desperate to get into, say, Coles and Woolies.
Yes. So I got a lot of no's. So I still have a letter where I sent it to the supermarket for, because you can't even just demand to come in and present, you have to get invited basically. So I would send my little proposal in, and I just have one where they wrote no and they circled it. And there was like an official lovely letter that went with it. But obviously the person had taken all the applications home and just went no. And I'd always go, well, how would I turn that no into a yes? So I remember at the time going and finding a person that had started Latina pasta, and they said, you're going to need to get a barcode. I'm like, how do I get a barcode? Or you need to get a nutritional panel. So in those days, we were just coming out of like stickers that prices were put on with stickers. Barcodes didn't exist. Nutritional panels were sort of just slowly coming in. So it was a big learning curve, and I just kept presenting every 6 months. And I think I hope the advice, if anyone, hears me when I reflect back, it's about the first no, just dust that off your shoulders because that's the start. I entered the Telstra Businesswoman of the Year Awards. Before I won it, I'd entered 16 years in a row.
Wow.
Like you just
And people
keep
wouldn't know
trying.
that, would they? They don't think that that's how it goes.
Yeah, they think that it's always the first time. Or I look, like I said, I've got 4 kids. And I say to my kids, if you aren't getting a few no's, you're not putting yourself out there enough. Try that other job or approach something, or don't be scared of a failure or scared of someone saying no, because I think sometimes that to me is you just never know.
So how many years or what period was it? You've got it on the shelf and you're driving around in your Daewoo. And when did
Yeah.
it click and when did you realise, hey, I've actually built something here that's going to be a viable business?
I hate to say it because it sounds terrible. It probably took 10 years to feel really confident that I wasn't going to turn up to a review and get everything deleted. And so, in Australia, you really want to sell to both the major supermarket chains, although in the last few years, we've obviously got some other ones like Aldi and Costco that have grown. But yeah, I think I never, still to this day, sit back and say, oh, we've made it or we've done it. I'm always looking at, what's the latest trend? Like I've been through so many food trends, from low carb to low sugar to now high protein. Like how do you evolve? And it's still the same product, but it's just the call outs and the things I say on the front of a pack so that people, appeals to people at that stage in their life. And so I'm just lucky that oats and muesli have always had, incredible health benefits. So I've been able to juggle all the food trends. And now with obviously GLP-1's a major food trend coming through. I think 1 in 10 Australians very soon will be on it. So,
So how has
changing.
that affected your sales and your business and your marketing?
Oh, heaps. So for us, we're very lucky. People on GLP-1 are just sort of eating less calories, but they're also wanting those calories to be higher in protein and higher in fiber. And that's what we do. So it's just making sure that we're calling that out. You'll see, the Carman's range predominantly now, lots of things we bring out are all about high protein. And the new trend that's coming in is fiber. People talking about that more because when people are eating less, they're often you can eat a lot of protein, but if you don't also have the fiber, you'll know about it when you go to the bathroom.
Indeed. So with the original muesli, what was in it that was different? Because I guess Australians growing up, say in the 70s and 80s, maybe would it have been like cornflakes, maybe Wheat Bix?
Yes.
Breakfast
So
cereals were pretty stock standard, weren't they?
yeah. So what people were used to was that big box of breakfast cereal, and often in your house you would have a collection of them. So you might have cornflakes and
Mm.
Sultana brand and Wheat Bix, and it was the concept that you just put it in a bowl and you put milk on it. But a lot of the time, if you think about a lot of those products, and I try to explain to my kids, well, show me where that came from in nature. And what's happened is people have realised that a lot of that is highly processed. Whereas when you think about muesli, which is sort of the core of what we did, it was ingredients that you would have in your pantry at home. And I mean, anyone can make the muesli. There's no secret to how we make our muesli. We make it like you would make it in the pantry at home. But do you want to spend all that time
No,
getting it, blending it, putting the yeah? So
no, I don't.
like that's our philosophy: is that we make food like you would make it at home, and we just try to keep that um, essence, but so we can sort of take that friction point out of your life in the hours that people might have spent many years ago. Being able to spend hours and hours in the kitchen cooking, now they're looking for time gains, and that's the sort of the space that we try and cover.
And you have the bars, which I am a personal massive fan of. But when you're selling them, like how many a year do you sell? How many boxes of muesli do you sell? How many bars do you sell?
So we sell, I don't know because it's moving all the time, but we sell 6 bars every second. So, so
Wow.
but we also export now to 32 countries. So that's not just in Australia. So exports are a growing part of our business. And, I would, I want to say this in a humble way, but in lots of countries, they don't make a product as good as ours. So I know, for example, in the UK, that there's nothing on the shelf as good as what we do. So at the end of the day, people will believe in marketing and they'll believe in a TV ad, but they won't come back week after week unless the product's good. And more people are flipping boxes over and ready ingredients these days.
Mm.
And that's like I said, that's the space we play in. And yes, that's we don't bring out anything that I don't taste every single round. That's the part of work that I do at Carman's, is making sure that I'm happy to put the Carman's name
Taste
to it.
tester.
Yeah, the taste tester.
Boss and
The
taste tester.
yes, well, I spend a lot more time in the taste testing, or like each morning at the moment, we're trying bring out all of these new high protein porridges. So today I had a crunchy peanut butter one. Tomorrow I'm going to be having a maple one, and so then so sometimes it's not even tasting at work. It's because I want to eat the whole bowl and make sure that how did it cook up at home, and is it the right quantity of milk that you might be putting in, all of those little things. So I'm
So
still
life is going along absolutely swimmingly. You've got your 4 children, all is
yeah.
well. Your business is flying, and then you have a party at home and you eat a piece of steak.
Well, it wasn't really a party. We just had 2 other couples for dinner,
Mm.
and it was just a Saturday night. It was just after 8 o'clock, and all of a sudden, I started choking on a piece of steak. And to be honest, I don't remember any of this happening, but we have security cameras, so I've been able to watch it again and again to try and work out what happened. How do I not remember? But within a couple of minutes, I'd taken myself out of the room. I was outside. My husband was sort of trying to communicate with me, but I couldn't speak. So he ran back into the room to get some help. And in that period of time, I collapsed, and it was pretty dramatic, to be honest. He and his friends did CPR and mouth to mouth on me for half an hour, waiting for the helicopter. We had paramedics, helicopter, everything until they could get there. And I mean, I remember the peaceful feeling of dying. That's all I remember. Nothing
You remember
else.
that?
Yeah. And I've said to doctors, how can I have no recollection of the choking, no recollection even of the day, but complete recollection of the calmness of dying? And they said, because your body floods itself with feel good hormones just to say there is nothing to worry about. So every positive endorphin it can just gets flooded so that you just feel this incredible sense of calmness, an incredible sense of peace. And that's all I felt. And while they were breaking 9 of my ribs and fracturing my sternum, and I was in a pretty bad way by the time that the ambulance got there, but the boys had done an incredible job
But
saving
you
my
say
life.
you say they as well, and when
Yeah.
I was sort of reading and watching when you've spoken about this before, your husband was having to save your life, and
Mm.
there are so many things that I think about in that process, like the trauma he must have felt to have to be so violent with you to get you to breathe.
Yeah. So he ran for the
It's
kids. You
phenomenal.
divide and conquer with kids. So he had always been the one that did surf life saving, and
Oh, so
so
he knew.
he had taken the kids from when they were little, and every year. So he ended up being the Nippers manager for anyone that knows Nippers, and
Yes.
so he had to re-qualify each year for Nippers. And so he had been doing CPR down at the Surf Life Saving Club for 15 years. So he'd only ever put a band aid on someone. He had never used any of the other skills because, we're at a pretty safe beach and nothing had ever happened. But he said, with all that training, you just drop into the training. And so he knew that he was going to be the best to do the CPR. He did put one of his best friends on mouth to mouth, which I do laugh about later, saying why he didn't do. And then the other one was helping because at the end taking over on the CPR. But so between the three of them, but Pete was unbelievable. He was so calm. He knew what to do. He was really great with the triple O caller to be able to, because he sort of knew enough to be able to question, to say, hey, I think that we've got to go harder here. And listening to the call was pretty traumatic, I have to say. But
Because did you want to do, like, at what point did you say, I want to go back, I want to watch the vision of me falling, and I'm going to listen to that audio?
yeah, so I started, and you imagine this is incredibly traumatic for Pete and incredibly traumatic for my kids. But for me, I had no
Mm.
memory of it. So I kept trying to piece it together. What did I do wrong? And because I could
Mm.
zoom in, I could watch myself. Where did I go wrong? So one of the first things was that we didn't have any steak knives. We hadn't set the table with steak knives, and we just had sort of like really crappy kitchen knives that couldn't cut it very well. And I had taken the end sort of grisly bit of
Mm.
the steak, of the roll. It was a big rolled piece of steak. So that was probably the first thing. So I was intrigued of watching the footage and seeing what happened and but I didn't really feel that no one else. I wasn't really showing this footage to anyone else. And for the boys, for the three guys that had saved my life, for them, they had this incredible relationship with the Triple O caller. They said, do you
Wow.
understand how much she was there for us? And they said, we really, we would love you to be able to reach out and thank her. Now, I'd never heard her voice. I didn't know. So I reached out to Triple O and said, I don't know if I can, but is it possible that I could find this caller because I would like to thank her? And so they were able to put me in contact, and through that process, Triple O said, "Would you mind if we recorded, if we came down and recorded
Mm.
you meeting the caller?" And then they said, "Would you be okay if we released the footage?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, look, I'm fine." But I said, anything I can do to help you, but do you really
Yeah.
want to release the fall? Because the fall's obviously quite traumatic. And they said, well, that will make it much more real for people. So I was sort of a bit hesitant, but now I look at the impact it's had on people, because that moment is people going, oh my gosh, in a couple of minutes, this could be my loved one that this happens to. And
Yeah.
so many people have gone now and learned how to do CPR or learned just a bit of basic first aid training, whether it's from St John's or
Mm.
their local community group, to
It,
just have that basic amount.
it's amazing, isn't it? And even the tip I read that you once said, if you're choking, don't be embarrassed. Don't walk out of the room
Yes.
so that you're on your own and no one knows.
Yeah. So I think that's innately, that's what we're all going to
I
do.
know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everyone generally will leave the scene. You're not going to sit and choke at the dinner table or
No.
at a restaurant. So most people will get up and leave and they go into the bathroom. So my big message to people is, if someone, you think they're choking, can someone follow them into the bathroom? Because what would have happened to me is that I would have collapsed in the bathroom, and it could have been, it depends until the next person who comes into the bathroom
Mm.
finds you. So that's often the difference between life and death. So making sure that you don't let someone go off and choke on their own, because it's just a natural feeling that you want to step away because you're
And I think
embarrassed.
a lot of people wouldn't realize that not only you've had this horrendous experience and your partner and your friends, but then your journey wasn't over because you were taken to hospital. And were you in emergency or ICU for a week?
Yeah. So they actually took me. I was pretty unwell when they got there, and they helicoptered me to the Alfred, the big hospital in Melbourne, and I woke up in intensive care, not knowing what had happened. And it was, that was sort of kind of this surreal experience, but I had the most incredible care, and ended up between intensive care and the trauma unit, because I had so many broken ribs and my sternum. I was on a lot of painkillers, and I was on a
Mm.
lot of wonderful, wonderful things that made me feel completely fine.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. And people complain about one broken rib, and I said, well, when you've got as many as I had broken, you don't feel a thing. So no, I'm incredibly grateful to the nursing staff there. So they have received a lot of muesli bars in the time since, of the beautiful care they gave me.
They're getting their music bars, but are you eating steak again? And if you did, what was that experience like for the first time? Were you cutting it up like a little bird?
Yeah. So I really didn't have it for a while, but it was more that I didn't ever want to say I'm never going to eat steak again. I'm just not that person. I eat everything. I'm in the food
Mm.
industry. And so I remember my husband went and bought a little piece of eye fillet, and we cut it up. And I promise you, it was only bigger than the size of a Tic Tac. And I physically couldn't swallow it. It just
Wow.
wouldn't go down. And, I'd gone and had some counseling, and they said, that's because your brain says danger, danger, like this is not good for you. Da. And so then it was a couple of months later, and I was at a sort of a fancy work dinner where I was a guest, and out comes the big bit of steak. And I didn't want to make a scene, and I just cut it up into tiny, tiny pieces. And then I was able to, so I chew it a lot and I ate it. I have to say, it's never something that I now buy. I do laugh because people
Mm.
might recognize me in the supermarket, and I'll always say, hey, have a look at my trolley, because you won't see.
No.
There's no steak, there's no lamb, there's nothing like that. And when I go to a restaurant, it's not at all the first thing I ever order anymore, but I
Mm.
can chop it. I chop it up like you would for a toddler, and I have it all pre-chopped so that I can't even. And I do that not even knowing that like, you look at my plate and you think, oh my gosh, it's all pre-chopped here.
It's
But yeah, that's how I do it.
the most amazing story. So you are well now and life goes on and
Yes.
even mentally to have to get through that. I imagine today you're sort of smiling as you tell the story, but it must have taken quite a while to get to this point.
I think what's different, and I've spoken to lots of people who've been through traumatic things
Yeah.
like I have, is that for the person, they never went through. When I say never went through it, we have no recollection. So I know someone who had a similar thing where he had a heart
Mm.
attack. It's the trauma often sits with the family, because all the people around them, because they were the ones, that, for example, in my situation, my husband Pete was asking one of his best friends, can you get the pulse? And there was no pulse. He couldn't get a pulse. But he said, I couldn't tell Pete there was no pulse. How do I tell him his wife has just died? He said, I couldn't say it. And so they were far more traumatized
Mm.
than me, because I woke up and I'm like, well, everyone's got to, I'm fine. I'm going to be fine. So because you don't live through it, I think there's a heavier weight on those that went through it. And I think the human body is extraordinary, that it doesn't let you remember any of that. I mean, can you imagine how traumatic it would be
Oh.
remembering that? And I've been told, or I've done some research around it, it's very similar for people drowning, apparently, that oxygen starvation, which is just this flooding of emotions and this feel good
Mm.
experience. So I'm very grateful that I didn't have that. But I'm also afterwards, a positive, optimistic person, where I think I've now got this second chance at life, and I just I'm super duper grateful.
What a beautiful spot to end our chat. I'd like to ask you our final question we ask everyone who fascinates
Yes.
you.
So you stole my thunder before, because I have a dear friend, Tanya
Oh,
Austin, who owns Tecuba, and we have become great friends, I guess, in the last 10 years. And she is one of the most fascinating humans. The way that her brain works, the way that she can travel, the way that she can dissect a problem. Yeah, so I find her incredibly fascinating. So if you don't know her, look her up, because she is one of the most fascinating humans you can come across.
all the more power to you both. Thank you for talking to me.
Oh, thank you, Jacqui. It's been a pleasure.